Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the origins of compartmentalization. When we say origins, like when did this first appear in the history of life? In other words, how did it evolve? Here's what we think happened. We look at prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Over here, you've got your prokaryote bacteria. Over here, you've got your animal cell, which is a eukaryote. When you look at these, you see a lot of differences. First one is size. Prokaryotes tend to be a lot smaller. Okay? Next one is they both have an outer membrane, but once you get past that outer membrane, you see lots of compartments in the animal cell. You don't see as many compartments in the prokaryotic cell. Basically, you have an area of DNA, some ribosomes, and everything has to happen in the same compartment, okay? This is how we talked about like preparing a meal where every dish goes in its own sort of container. Everything here kind of has to be mixed together. So that can make things a little more primitive than the animal cell. We have specialized areas over here. This is sort of a one crock pot where everything's going together. And that can be good, but everything compartmentalized on a cellular level is better. Okay, so this is sort of the same diagram. If I go down this middle here, I have my prokaryote on this side and my eukaryote on the left. And you can kind of see you've got we've gone over this, your prokaryotic structure over here. You've got an area of DNA, you've got ribosomes, you've got a plasma membrane, and over here, again, you have all these specialized structures. So we know through lots of evidence that prokaryotes preceded eukaryotes in evolution, okay? And you can actually look at fossilized bacteria. Bacteria will fossilize, so we know that. Okay, so when we look at a prokaryote, it doesn't have a nucleus, it has a nucleoid, which is just an area that DNA is. So it has all the enzymes just kind of available in that small space. And it can still do DNA replication, RNA transcription, and protein synthesis, but it's all happening in the same container. Eukaryotic cells, like we just talked about, we just did that 10.2, they have all these specialized regions. We believe that this is a big idea here, endosymbiosis, that these guys evolved from free prokaryotes. So in other words, long ago, we believe that some sort of prokaryote started living in another cell. And we're going to talk about some evidence for that. All right. Let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, so as I said a minute ago, the first cells were prokaryotic and very simple in structure. But we know over time they evolved into the eukaryotic cells. So what we see are membrane organelles that evolved in eukaryotes, formed from prokaryotes by something called endosymbiosis, okay? Endo means inside, symbiosis means living together. So we think this guy moved in and just said, I'll do something for you if you do something for me. So let's take a look at that. So this idea of endosymbiotic theory, it tries to explain how eukaryotic cells emerged, okay? And so we have larger cells that engulfed smaller cells, and this is sort of where the magic happens. They didn't digest them, okay? We have a larger cell with a symbiotic relation where one exists inside the other, and as that happened, this one doesn't have to, this prokaryote that moves inside, now it doesn't have to do everything on its own. So it starts to specialize, okay? This would almost be like if I dropped you off on an island. You got to do everything all by yourself, okay? A single cell has to do it all. But let's say we have a group and one person's in charge of keeping the fire going, the other person's in charge of getting the water. So when we have more organelles, jobs can get more specialized. The more specialized an animal can get, the more things it can sort of do, the more ways it can take advantage of the environment. All right, so some other things that lead us to believe this happened are these right here. These cells, or these organelles, I should say, both have double membranes. Well, what else has a double membrane? A cell, a plain old cell. They can divide just like a regular old cell can. They have their own ribosomes, and they also have circular strands of DNA. We see all four of these things in bacteria. So know these four things. Double membranes, they can replicate on their own, they have their own ribosomes, and they have their own DNA. And I've talked multiple times about how during sexual reproduction you keep mom's mitochondrial DNA. So what scientists think is that mitochondria and chloroplasts were once their own free living organisms, but they were taken in by larger cells, and we had this symbiosis. And these guys are very desirable because they're both energy specialists. So once they're in there, they start providing energy by respiration and photosynthesis. And what is the bigger cell's job? Well, the bigger cell's job gives protection, and the energy specialist needs a lot of materials, so they give nutrients. So this one moves in, as you can see right here, says, hey, I'll be the energy specialist, just keep me well fed, and I'll do what you need me to do, which is make energy. Okay, so about to wrap this one up. You want to tell me the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. At this point, that's something you have studied multiple times throughout the course. You want to tell me how this evolution happened and evidence for it. Well, I gave you those 4 points to look at. So tell me that, well, cells engulfed other cells, energy specialists, and we think that's true because of these 4 reasons. All right, this wraps up. It's the last video for chapter 2.